You're live.
Hello and welcome to the Newark Museum of Art's Community Day Zoopalooza. It's been a day of amazing interactions with animals and humans too. This Zoopalooza has been presented by the Horizon Foundation for New Jersey. Thank you for joining us. How to draw lions and elephants. There's a lot more coming up, which I'll tell you about later on at the end of the session. If you are watching on Zoom, you can drop questions and comments in the Q&A features at the bottom of the screen. And if you're watching on Facebook, you can write your questions and comments in the boxes below. Also, if you should need closed caption, just check that CC button at the bottom of the screen and you will be able to participate in that way. So let's move forward. We're excited to have Bob Walters from Dino Art here with us today, and we're going to learn how to draw two magnificent animals. Take it away, Bob.
Hello, my name is Bob Walters. I'm my partner Tess, our natural history artist. We've worked for a lot of different museums around the country, and today we're going to start to show you how to draw the head of an Asian elephant, Elephas asiaticus. And you need a pencil and a marker. You're going to start with a pencil, and the pencil will be used to make what's called a preliminary drawing. That drawing does not have to be perfect, so don't worry about erasing or making mistakes. You'll erase those after you've inked it in with the marker. Now you want to start with just a circle. Very simple. A little line like this, which will be the neck going off. This is going to be the line of the trunk. This line will be the line of a tusk. And you want to put a little round circle there for the eye, because the elephant won't get very far if it can't see. You just want to make a sort of square shape like that. That'll be the ear. Asian elephants have relatively small ears compared to the African elephants, which have very large ears. Neck area. And a little wedge right about here. That'll be part of the mouth. You want to do this. That'll be the trunk. And wait a little while for people to catch up. You can draw almost anything, or just about everything, just using simple, basic geometric shapes. In fact, that's sort of how the universe is made, out of simple geometric shapes. Take your marker and fill in the eye. I'm going to give it a lower lid and something of an upper lid. Now I'm going to draw the line of the head. Allow me to draw that first, and then you follow what I've done. I'm going to draw a little half circle here. That'll be the beginning of the tusk. Now I'm going to continue the trunk all the way down. It has this sort of little, almost like fingers on the end. You don't have to do this in one stroke. If it takes you 2 or 3 strokes to do it, that's fine. Not a problem. Put a line here and some lines here to show where the tusk inserts into the head. I'm going to draw another tusk that's on the other side of the animal right there. It's just sort of a wedge shape. Just copy the one you did here, right there, slightly above it. drawing the mouth. See, it's beginning to look vaguely like an elephant. Now wait a little while for people to catch up.
Looks great so far.
Yeah, it looks vaguely elephantine, I think. I'm going to put a little bit more here on the neck and bring this line up a bit and bring this line there. Now the elephant has lots of lines and wrinkles on the nose, on that trunk. And in between those lines, it has even finer lines and wrinkles. People often think that elephants, because they look as if they have no fur, do not have hair on them, but they actually do, quite a lot. And of course, their ancient relatives, the mammoths and mastodons, did have hair. Now I'm going to put a line like this. And I'm going to put some wrinkles because they have wrinkly ears. And more wrinkles along here. Elephants are very wrinkly. Their skin is very, very wrinkly. And sort of wrinkles look like this, they crisscross. Now on the Asian elephant, I'm not drawing the whole body, but it's an anatomical hint. On the Asian elephant, the back sort of curves like that with the shoulder here. On the African elephant, it actually has sort of a sway back. And so it's not just the size of the ears that you can tell them apart, but they're actually built just a little bit differently. Wait for people to catch up. And some more wrinkles. Oh, when you're through with your drawing, don't forget to sign it. Sign mine now. And you might want to put a circle with a C in front of it. That copyrights it, so people can't steal your drawing. Yeah, I wonder how we're doing with people catching up.
There are a couple of questions, or a question. Does an elephant and lion eat grass?
Elephants are herbivores, and yes, they generally eat leaves off trees, but yes, they eat plants. Lions eat meat. They are primary carnivores.
Thank you.
Not known to eat grass. Lions will, in desperation in bad drought weather, occasionally attack or try to attack a juvenile elephant or a baby, but generally lions are smart enough not to attack elephants. It's not a healthy idea for a lion. The elephant would generally win.
Really?
They're incredibly powerful.
What is the outside of the physical characteristics of the Asian elephant and the African elephant? What else would define the difference?
Generally, the African elephants are slightly, and this isn't always true, slightly larger. But basically, it's the size of the ears and the different curvature of the spine, of the back. Otherwise, their skeletons look pretty much the same. Their skin looks about the same. Coloration's about the same. The big ears on the African elephant are not necessarily to increase their hearing. It's to actually cool the animal off. They have a lot of blood vessels in there, and they can use it to shed heat because they're what are called heat sinks. They're large, and therefore they generate a lot of heat. They need to get rid of that on the very hot savannas in Africa.
Right. Thank you. There are no other questions so far.
Cool. Let me proceed to the more complicated lion.
Right.
Oh, don't forget to send in your pictures because we all want to see them. So if you can email those pictures in.
Someone just asked, how long do they live?
That's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that offhand. Elephants can live quite a long time. They're not as short-lived as lions. But I've actually never looked up how long an adult animal can live.
Thank you.
Perhaps someone at the museum has the answer.
I do not.
Well, in that case, I suggest going to Google. Jump on the computer. I'll look that up later today myself.
And they would like the email so that they can send the images to you. So we'll
our email is bobtess, BOBTESS, at dinoart, DINOART.com.
Let me repeat it. bobtess at dinoart.com.
Yep.
Okay.
And send them into the museum too. And you guys can always send some to us, show them to us.
Right.
And put up a gallery of them, which would be
That
great.
would be fun. That really
Yeah, I know, really. We've done that before. I've always been very pleased at the results.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously. Yeah, it looks sort of like an elephant. I'm going to put a few more wrinkles in here.
Someone said that they think they live over 20 years.
Oh, I'm pretty sure they live over 20 years.
Mm.
I'm pretty sure that they live over 20 years. Also, when you're doing a drawing like this, if you don't like the first version, do not be dismayed. Just do it again and then do it again. Practice may not make perfect, but it'll make you a lot better. When I started drawing when I was a little kid, I was not exactly a child prodigy at drawing. I wish I could say I was like young Michelangelo, but I was not. I'm living proof. You can get better considerably. And when Tess and I are working on projects with scientists, we have to work with quite a few people and please them with artwork. So we have to do many preliminary drawings and have them corrected and then submit more and more and more until we finally get to a final composition, something that both the scientists and the graphics people at the museum or the art director for the publisher are happy with. So don't be dismayed if you have to do a lot of different drawings. The point is, though, is to have fun with it and not to make it a chore.
Yeah.
Then it's not so good. Okay, Leo the lion. I'm going to do the basic shapes again. When I have it roughed out, I'll point out that that's the way before I put the mane on, which is a cool part, that's how to draw a lioness, a female lion. You want to draw a oval, but sort of aimed this way, egg-shaped, it's aimed this way. And then neck, which we're not going to have a lot of detail on. Let me do this. You draw this little slope and then an angle down like this. I'm going to draw a line like this, a sort of curved line, and make that dip down a bit. Now, this doesn't have to be perfect. You're doing this in pencil. So if you don't like it, you can erase. And when you're through inking, erase all your pencils so you just have the ink line. Give people a chance to catch up. And I'm going to draw a sort of circle here, a rough circle. That'll be the chin of a lion. And I won't, when I ink it, I won't necessarily follow that exactly. So yours does not have to be perfect. I cannot emphasize more of it. Perfection at this level is not actually what you're looking for. Put in an ear. Line like that. A line where the skull goes like that, which you won't see in the final drawing. This without the mane more or less looks like what a lioness's head looks like, i.e. the lion without the heavy metal haircut. Your muscles that go like that. That. Now I'm going to draw in, rough in the mane. This is where you get to scribble. Hey kids, you can scribble. Yeah, the manes are pretty big.
So Bob, maybe you can tell us the big difference between a male and a female lion.
Well, the obvious big difference is that mane of hair. Females do not have it. The males tend to be a bit bigger and apparently a lot lazier. If everything we've been taught so far is that the females do most of the work, they do most of the hunting.
Yeah,
So it's not true that the male lions never hunt. We actually have films of them hunting. They do hunt, but they've got a pretty good gig, I must say. Like, really? You stand around and look good. That's the story?
Someone just said males are lazy bums.
I resemble that remark. Stop. Sue them for definition of character. Now get your marker. I'm going to start with the eye. I'm going to put a pupil in there. There's a little dark mark that comes out in the front of a lion's eye. I'm going to do the snout. Let people start to catch up. Despite the elephant being larger, it takes less time to draw. So much larger.
At the Newark Museum of Art, we have a taxidermied female lion.
Oh, cool.
Chasing gazelles.
Oh, it's in the diorama?
In the dynamic earth. Yeah, in the diorama.
I always admired the artists that did the background paintings for those things.
Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah, which I've never actually gotten to do because people don't really do them anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just young enough, so I didn't do that. There's a wonderful artist who did that for the American Museum of Natural History named Perry Wilson, who was the king of doing this. They're really beautiful. Now do the ear. They don't have pointed ears particularly. They're more rounded than your usual cat ear. Putting the spots in where you can draw whiskers coming out. If you want to. If you don't want to, I'm just going to put the dots in.
Well, someone just added into the comments, African elephants live 60 years according to Alexa. Asian elephants live 55 to 70 years.
70. Wow.
That's what Alexa says.
Well, yes. And we know Alexa would never lie.
Right.
That's a 70. Oh, that's interesting. All right, start on the main here. Won't scribble quite as much on the main. Yeah. Get into a lot of hair here.
It's their trademark.
Yeah, it's probably going to date me. People wouldn't remember who this guy is. It's like Sammy Hagar hair. Assuming anyone in the audience remembers who he is. Van Halen references.
Oh, you're dating yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, after this, you just have a lot of fun putting in the hair.
And that takes a lot of control too, right, Bob?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Actually, yes. Although you get to scribble a little bit if you want to. Yeah. You're allowed. I mean, it could take just as long on the elephant if I was going to put in all the crisscross wrinkly skin. But if you start doing that in black and white, it starts to look pretty weird pretty fast. Same thing would happen if you did that on a lizard. If you tried to put in, at least in pen and ink, every scale, you'd wind up with a very spotty looking drawing of a lizard very quickly. I learned this the hard way by making that mistake. It was a lot of work, and I looked at it and went, that was better quite a while back.
Every artist has had those words run in their head.
I probably should have left this alone a while back. Well, an interesting thing in art is knowing when to stop.
Right. And it's just as much about looking at the piece as much as it is executing the piece.
Yeah, put a little tooth showing here. It shows occasionally on lions, that really sharp tooth shows. All right, look, give people a little bit of time to catch up. It looks sort of leonine, okay.
Just as a time check, it's about 25 minutes after 4.
I'm gonna sign this puppy. Copyright it. And don't forget to sign your work. And you can color these in. Once you've erased the pencils off, try coloring them in. Look at some pictures, color pictures, photographs of elephants and lions, and try coloring it in, like painting it in with markers or watercolors or crayon. From now on, you're just decorating fur. Some lions have relatively dark manes. Others have relatively light manes. And I'm not sure exactly why that is. I was just watching a show called The Zoo today. And one of the lions on the show had a very dark, almost black mane. And the other had a mane that was almost the same color as its regular fur. Very, very sort of almost a blondie. And I don't think it was used in hair color.
I guess similar to humans, we all have different shades to our hair and our skin.
Yeah, interesting. Because it's certainly not, it's not a species difference at all. It's
Yeah.
nothing to do with speciation.
We just earlier saw an albino wallaby.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really cool.
That's cool. This is maybe something you could answer. Does albinism occur in all species?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I would think yes, but I don't.
yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. I've seen albinos in various different species I would never have associated that with. Going like, oh, really? Wallaby. Didn't see that coming with a kangaroo. So this guy looks more or less like a lion.
Yes, absolutely.
And the lion cubs are kind of spotty. But those markings, camouflages, spotties goes away as they get older. I assume it's to protect them when they're young.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So someone made a comment, and I'm not sure which museum they're referring to, but they said Matthew Henson was also the main person who did drawings for the museum and always the taxidermy. I'm assuming that's the Newark Museum, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, don't know. I know Perry Wilson did stuff for the American Museum of Natural History, but I don't know if he did anything for Newark. I know he did some stuff for the Smithsonian. So his best work is at the New York Museum. It's really quite spectacular. He also did some natural history illustrations with the animals in it for Life magazine.
Oh.
Way back when.
When there was a Life magazine. Is there still Life magazine?
Yeah, I was a really little kid. It's for a series called The World We Live In. It was a gatefold illustration showing Western desert life. Both one illustration was during the day and the other was at night, including burrows under the ground.
Wow.
Very beautifully done picture. So he's not as well known as I would like him to be. But there are quite a few people who have done some of this kind of work, like Jay Materney is, and he's not remembered that well, which is a shame. He did a lot of the murals and background paintings down at the Smithsonian.
Oh, wow. So the same person who made the comment said it is the Museum of Natural History in New York that Matthew Henson was a part of.
Did he? Cool. So either he came afterward or worked with Perry Wilson.
Could be, yeah.
A friend of ours, who's older than we are, Chris Ray, worked at the American Museum of Natural History and actually worked with and knew Perry Wilson and some of the crew there. So I'll ask him.
Yeah, it's certainly a gift to do that.
Oh, well, yeah. I would like to have done some of those. But dioramas, well, for obvious reasons, taxidermied animals kind of went out of fashion for some obvious reasons, which we won't go into a lot of detail on. And
remind everyone that you can still put questions, any questions that you have for Bob about what we've done today or his career. Please put it in the chat or the Q&A.
My favorite color is blue.
Someone has raised their hand.
Me. Oh. Ooh, I see.
Someone said blue is my favorite color too, Isaiah.
It's the most common favorite color.
And where did you study art?
I went to the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts here in scenic Philadelphia. And back in those days, practically prehistoric times, they made us study anatomy. I thought I was going to medical school.
Can you tell us what is the hardest animal to draw?
Well, whatever one I'm currently working on. That's a hard question. The modern animals in some ways are easier because we have really good references for them. We know what they look like. The prehistoric animals gets a bit more iffy because we often have very good skeletons of them, but we do not have the soft tissues. And we have to do a lot of educated guesswork as to where the muscles go. And so that makes it harder to do.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the really big prehistoric reptiles, because we have no really good modern analogs. Despite having some large flightless birds and having crocodiles and alligators, they're not always the best analogs.
Right.
So we have to look at the bones, and working with anatomists like Dr. Peter Dodson here at Penn, look where the muscles would go. It would insert and extend from an insert. And you can often see on the bones what are called muscle scars, where the muscle started. Since almost all vertebrates have the same basic musculature, muscle structures, you can make pretty good guesses as to where the muscles were. What we don't know is muscle mass. We don't know that. And that might depend on whether the particular dinosaurs were cold-blooded or warm-blooded.
Huh.
That would actually alter the amount of muscle necessary to do work.
And how would you know the coloration of the prehistoric animals?
We don't. Mm. We have information from dinosaurs on possibly one. Even the prehistoric mammals, we're just going by what the modern mammal colors are and extrapolating that that's what color they would be. We have information from fur from mammoths. We know they're sort of reddish brown fur with black tips. But you go further back, we don't know. You just have to look at modern animals, reptiles and birds, and try to extrapolate what would be the best color pattern for them. Mm. Because some of it may be dictated by their environment, if we know what the environment was. But sometimes we don't know that. We have very little information on what the exact environment was.
It's a fascinating study. And what about big cats? Do they all have the same body shape that you know?
Yeah, basically all the really big cats belong to the group Panthera, and they all have the same basic body morph, whether it's a cougar, leopards, tigers, lions. They all have the same basic body shape. Some of the smaller big cats, like lynxes, are shaped a little bit differently. They're not as long, they're not as lanky, they're not as rangy. It's basically because where they live and their mode of operation is a bit different. They're going after smaller prey.
Are there, like the lion we just established earlier on, or you established it, that the difference is the mane? Are other cats similar between male and female? Are there differences like that?
There are not a lot of differences like that with the other members of Panthera. A male tiger and a female tiger look basically about the same. Same thing with leopards, snow leopards. The other members of Panthera, there's not the same kind of sexual dimorphism, extreme sexual dimorphism you see with the lion's spectacular hairdo.
So someone just asked, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They don't even use a blow dryer.
What is your favorite artist in painting when you were in school?
Well, there are various ones. I'm not sure I had my favorite for doing natural history art was Charles R. Knight, who's sort of the patron saint of natural history artists, not just reconstructing prehistoric animals, but just natural history art, painting animals in general. He's one of the seminal influences on, I think, everybody in the field, really? At least at a certain age. And you can see his work at the American Museum of Natural History, but also at the Smithsonian, at the Field Museum in Chicago, where I did a whole bunch of very beautiful murals, prehistoric, all sorts of prehistoric animals, up to modern animals.
Oh, that's cool.
But other illustrators influenced me that weren't doing this kind of work. I was born in Philadelphia, but I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, home of Howard Pyle, the dean of America's Golden Age of Illustration. He was the teacher of N.C. Wyeth, who's another one of my favorite illustrators, and the teacher of Maxwell Parrish, another local boy who's one of my
One of my favorites.
Yeah, well, Pyle was a teacher of both Wyeth and Maxwell Parrish.
Oh, wow.
And Jesse Wilcox Smith and a number of Golden Age illustrators who are very, very well thought of.
So someone just asked, what is your favorite dinosaur and what is your favorite dinosaur to draw?
My favorite dinosaur is usually the one that currently I'm working on. It becomes my favorite because I'm working on it. The one I most recently worked on was a relatively recently discovered little ceratopsian dinosaur called Auroroceratops, named after Peter Dodson's wife. Her name is Dawn. But my favorite, of course, is T-Rex. Come on. I know we have larger, it's not the biggest dinosaur carnivore anymore. You know, Spinosaurus is probably bigger. Giganotosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus are definitely bigger, but they're not as cool.
So how did you
T-Rex is still the coolest.
You went to art school, right? How did you get from art school into doing these kinds of illustrations and drawings?
Well, I saw a cover.
Or was that always your intention?
Yeah, a cover story in Life magazine when I was 4 years old, when I think glaciers still were around. And that started me. It had a gatefold illustration inside of Rudolph Zallinger's famous mural, which you can see at the Peabody Museum at Yale. It's 110 feet long by, I think, 10 feet high. And it's not done digitally the way we do it now. It's painted on the wall with brushes and paint. And no, he wasn't using assistants. He did it all himself. It took him 5 years.
No projection, huh?
No, no projectors. Yeah, he just had to grit it off and blow it up. And wow, it's quite an achievement.
Old school.
I saw that illustration and I went, wow, I'd like to draw these. And so I started, among many other things, drawing prehistoric animals, drawing dinosaurs, which I once again want to tell the kids, I did not draw well. I won't embarrass myself. Tess has saved for my mom's house some of my pictures, the old ones. And sometimes when we're all together, she'll show them off. I'm like, please don't do that.
To your dismay.
To my dismay, please don't do that. They're not very good. So I went to art school with the intent of becoming an illustrator, and very much so. I wanted to do this kind of work. Uh-huh. And not that long out of art school, I had to take all kinds of awful jobs. The best of them was doing artwork for silkscreen sweatshops in the 70s, lots of rock and roll t-shirts. But at the same time, I was beginning to do freelance work for the medical publishers, of which there were a lot in town at the time. Okay. Around Washington Square, there was Saunders and Lippincott and Wiley and Lee and Febiger. And so I started doing technical drawings, medical drawings, anatomical drawings, and then general scientific drawings for those publishers, and began to sort of hone my skills at doing the scientific work.
Yeah. Well, it has to be very detailed work.
And well, yes, and right. And in the case of prehistoric animals, not all scientists agree with each other, as you probably know. And so if you're working with several of them and they don't agree, it can become an interesting experience to try and please them all.
So someone just asked, you have mentioned geometric shapes when drawing animals. Could you please elaborate more on that, and how else can we apply this technique?
You can you can draw anything, starting with simple geometric shapes. I mean, the universe is kind of made out of simple geometric shapes. It's actually sort of constructed that way. So you can draw anything, people, cars, buildings, everything can be drawn starting with those simple shapes and elaborating on them, adding details as you go. In fact, it's always best to start with a relatively simple compositional sketch or you show where you want to place your elements. And they can be anything. You can just draw in blobs if you want to, and then do sketches using the simple shapes to build up an animal, the different elements you want in your painting or drawing, and then just put the whole thing together at the end by copying it again in your later larger picture.
I see. And do you draw birds or insects?
I've drawn birds, insects, snakes, frogs, fish, ants.
You name it, you got it, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it has obviously been prehistoric stuff, but there's been a lot of other stuff that's not, all sorts of stuff I or Tess have worked on. And we sometimes work and collaborate with other artists on some of these projects. I mean, one of our artists is a trained zoologist.
Ah. Someone just asked, we got that. Have you ever illustrated a book?
Oh, yes, lots. At my age, a lot of them. The one I'm going to plug right now, which is going to be a shameless plug, is Discovering Dinosaurs by Bob Walters and Tess Kissinger.
Ah, that's great. Yeah. Congratulations.
By Applesauce Press. It's got hundreds of color, it's all in color, hundreds of color illustrations of dinosaurs.
So that would be a great reference.
It is a good reference. Hundreds of them. It's not a kid's book. It's not an adult book. We consider it a whole family book.
That's great.
And it's got 2-page spreads and little small color things and really big color illustrations. It's got hundreds of them in there. Not all of them, but we tried to get as many in as we could. And we tried to make it as up to date as we could. But that was in 2015, and they've already found, I have lost count of how many more, quote, new dinosaurs, end quote.
So is it just drawings in that book or illustrations, or does it have also content?
Oh, it had. Tess and I wrote the content. It has plenty of text.
That's great.
And we vetted all the information with various paleontologists, with Peter Dodson here at Penn, and Dr. Michael Brett Sermon at the Smithsonian, and Dr. Catherine Forster, who at that point was the president of the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology. We vetted the stuff with as many people as we could ask. And we specifically, on specific kinds of dinosaurs, we tried to get the information about them from the scientists that studied that specific kind of animal. So we'd be right about the ceratopsis. We would be right about the duckbills. Oh, Tess is approaching with the book. Oh.
Yes. Hold it up for us. Someone just asked again what the title is.
Shameless plug.
Beautiful cover.
It's got a textured cover. It's textured like scales. And on the back cover, the scale pattern is the actual pattern from a duckbill dinosaur. We have skin samples, impressions from a duckbills. So it actually has the duckbill skin on the back cover.
Terrific. So I think we have answered all the questions that we have here, and it was a great exercise today to learn how to draw these amazing animals. And we want to thank you, you and Tess, for your devotion to prehistoric animals and drawing and sharing those things with everyone.
And keep drawing.
Keep drawing, yeah.
Yes,
and send those things in, right? Send those
send those cards and letters in. Because they usually turn out well, and they usually look pretty good. We like to see them. We like to see what people are doing.
So we want to thank you and Tess so much for coming today and sharing all your knowledge and your wisdom.
Thank you.
It was really great fun to watch all this. I hope everyone watching enjoyed this as much as I did. We ask you to please consider donating to the Newark Museum of Art so we can continue to bring these wonderful programs to you virtually, so you're right in your home and sharing these amazing gifts and skills. You can sign up for other upcoming events on our website at newarkmuseumofart.org. And keep a lookout for the next Community Day on April 17th. Cherry blossoms. We love cherry blossoms. It means we can get outside more, right? So I want you to have a great rest of the day. And thank you, Bob and Tess, so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.